Hey guys, and welcome to the last section of this course, Securing MongoDB. In this section, we will go through all the options that MongoDB offers to secure our database. In the first video of this section, we will understand authentication in MongoDB. Authentication verifies whether you are who you claim to be. Authentication and access control are two aspects of security that go hand in hand and that you should be mindful of. We will be covering the concept of access control in the next video. Authentication comes into picture once you enable access control. MongoDB will first confirm your identification and usage rights before allocating permission to perform the tasks you need to carry out. In other words, authentication always occurs before access control. There can be various scenarios of authentication. You may be a user who wants to run commands from the Mongo shell, or maybe there is an application that has to be authenticated to execute a series of database commands. Now, there are 4 authentication mechanisms that are supported by Mongo. The first is the SCRAM, which is available in Community Edition. We then have the XPoint 509 certificate available in the Community Edition again. Kerberos is only available in the Enterprise or the Paid Edition. And finally, we have the LDAP, which is the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, again, only available in the Enterprise or the Paid Edition. Let's take a look at all of these mechanisms. The first one on our list is the SCRAM. The Salted Challenge Response Authentication Mechanism is an authentication mechanism that provides a unique salt per user to favor randomization and curb damage in case a user account has been compromised. It is the default authentication mechanism that is used by Mongo and can also adjust the iteration count or the cost. Now, while the time taken to generate a hash for this mechanism is relatively longer, it does allow you to set a high cost value, which thereby makes it really hard to crack a user's password. MongoDB supports 2 SCRAM algorithms. The first one is the SCRAM SHA-1. The SHA-1 was introduced way back in 1995 by the United States National Security Agency. Now, the general notion is that this algorithm is not so secure against brute force attacks. You can look up the collision attack which was launched on this algorithm by Google in 2017 for better clarity on this topic. On the bright side, the SCRAM SHA-1 does allow a user to increase the cost. The default value of the cost that is offered by this algorithm is 10,000. The second SCRAM algorithm is the SCRAM SHA-256. The SHA-256 was also developed by the National Security Agency and first appeared in 2001. Covering up the drawbacks of the SHA-1, this algorithm has kind of a better resistance to collision attacks. That being said, SHA-256 is still vulnerable to pseudo-collision and length extension attacks. Like the SCRAM SHA-1 algorithm, you can also increase the cost through SHA-256. The default value that is offered by this algorithm is 15,000. The next authentication mechanism we will be looking at is the XPoint 509. The XPoint 509 defines the public key certificate which is used to encrypt a message. It also defines the mathematically related private keys which are used to decrypt the message, thus forming the basis of HTTPS as well as TLS and the SSL. This mechanism uses the XPoint 509 public key infrastructure to verify that a public key, which is either presented by a client or another member of the cluster, belongs to that particular client or that particular member. MongoDB uses the XPoint 509 certificate with a secure TLS or an SSL connection to authenticate clients and members of replica sets and sharded clusters. The next authentication mechanism that we are going to get familiar with is Kerberos. This comes under the category of the MongoDB Enterprise Edition and first took its roots in mid-1980s as part of a larger project in MIT. The mechanism was adopted as the default authentication mechanism by Microsoft for Windows 2000. Every node in Kerberos is called as a principal and should have a unique name. Now, for better scalability and performance purposes, Every principal has its own realm with a Kerberos key distribution center. This is really similar to a replica set in Mongo that has its own nodes and members. You can take a look at this illustration to understand how Kerberos works when an authentication request for a service is made by a client. We now come to the last authentication mechanism offered by Mongo, and that is the LDAP. The LDAP stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, and it is precisely defined in RFC 4511. This protocol is a step up from the more comprehensive but less efficient XPoint 500 Directory Access Protocol, which was introduced in the 1980s. LDAP was designed to allow access to an XPoint 500 based digital directory with lesser bandwidth as compared to other directory access protocols. The current version v3 of the LDAP was published in 2006 as RFC 4511 by an engineering team working for Novell Inc. This concludes the first video of section 6, where we learned about the 4 mechanisms of authentication used in Mongo.